Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another TTRPG panel. Today, we are talking about bleed, the line between our emotions and that of our characters, and all the fuzzy space in between. And I have a wonderful group of people to talk on this topic who are much more informed than I am. And I'm going to go around in my little clockwise here to introduce y'all. And then I have a question for you to kick this off, which is, have you ever experienced bleed in a role-playing game? And if you have, what game were you playing? And this is largely for my own curiosity. So starting over here, depending on which way my camera is. Yeah, with Michelle. Michelle Kelly of EUphoria is a professional actor and voice actor who brings her experience from the world of performance into the world of TTRPGs. You can find her work on the link that we're posting in the chat and over on Blue Sky. So, Michelle, have you ever experienced bleed? And if so, in what game?
Hello, I have. I have experienced bleed one time. And it was playing a game, Fiasco. It was a one-shot, and I had a little bit of bleed. And I'm not going to say who I was playing with because I fully was like, I have a crush on this person. I'm in love. I have such a crush on this person. And then I realized I have a crush on the character this person was playing, and I have to take a breath. So yeah, that is a time I've experienced bleed, but I will tell you no more about it because I will never let this person know.
Because I'll take that to my grave.
I will.
Amazing. Okay, continuing on to Gina. Gina Susanna is a multi-award winning actual play performer, voice actor, freelance writer, and creative known for crafting emotionally rich characters. Parentheses sad, um, and bringing sincerity and nuance to her roles. You might know her from Blackwater D&D's God Killer Balance, from The Heart is a Dungeon, The Panic Table, and many other places. Gina, have you ever experienced bleed?
Yes. Yes, I have. I am going I want to talk about this, and I will tell you about this privately, but I know that people who are again, same with Michelle, the people who are listening will know, and so I will not give all the details, but it was in my first ever game that I'd ever played. It was my home game, D&D campaign, and I did not know what to expect with that character, and I learned so much about myself, but I unfortunately learned it in many ways through bleed itself and in recognizing what was coming up for me in playing that game. It was a
Oh, now I
trip.
want to I
I
need
will
to
tell
add a
you
new
I'll tell you
question
about
to
it.
my list. Not about that, but I'm like, wait a second. Is the fact that D&D made me gay bleed? I need a cut. This is a question I have. I'm adding it to the list. Okay. Continuing on, we have Rachel. Rachel Kordell of RPJesters is an actress, AP performer, and TTRPG producer for RPJesters. She has played tabletop role-playing games for over 12 years and loves sinking deep into her characters. You can find her across the internet at Rachel Kordell or right here on Twitch. Rachel, have you experienced bleed?
And absolutely. Yeah. I have, I think, several times, like, to put it in one place, I think would be like limiting to the experience. Um Mostly I think I really recognized it when I started playing Vampire the Masquerade, but I think it does actually extend to my earlier games too when we were playing Dungeons and Dragons. For sure. Context
Incredible.
maybe maybe to be discussed in our topics.
Okay. And all right. For people who don't see the magic behind the curtain, Vin arrived, but we're not going to put them on the spot right yet. Okay, just you get a second, get settled in. We are live already, though. Just a heads up. Okay, friends. Well, I am going to hop into it. Actually, no, I'm going to introduce Vin. Uh, anyway, so Vin Vox is a voice actor and tabletop performer with a penchant for all things vampiric and tragic. I'm noticing a through line here. I'm noticing a lot of tragedy, a lot of dark stories amongst y'all. I'm seeing the the crossover. Um, okay, well, I am going to hop into my first question. Just a real what are we even talking about, y'all? My question is, what is bleed? And how does that differ from or overlap with like just being immersed in a story? And
Yeah.
anyone who wants to take it, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, bleed, at least as far as my understanding, and of course, if anybody disagrees or has a different opinion, we can all jump in on that. But from what I understand it as is, it is the thing when you are feeling emotions for your character outside of the game. And I think this, we'll maybe touch on this later, but, or, you have feelings from outside that you are applying to a game that don't necessarily represent your feelings of the character in regards to the narrative. Um, it can be difficult to deal with if you're not anticipating having that kind of emotional connection to a game where you think you're just going to be telling silly stories with your friends. So it can be jarring for people to experience, but it is definitely something that we can experience because we are emotional social creatures. So yeah.
That's such a good definition. You could write a Wikipedia definition. I don't know how much I can add. I think like to your point, Anne, about like immersion, I think that what you just said, Rachel, about like it's like outside the game after or bringing stuff in, like I think we can all become so immersed like as players and like really feel like we're in that moment with our characters in the moment. But I think bleed is really when the moment's over, the game's over, we're stepping away, but we still are feeling these emotions caught up that we're not able to quite place back within the character is when like bleed really comes in.
And I think the only thing that I would add to that is that immersion is most of the time intentional. We kind of go into that anticipating it. We go into that often looking for that. And bleed, what inherently makes bleed what it is that it's unintentional. It's not, unless, which I know we're going to talk about playing for bleed, unless you are looking for that specifically. Bleed is the thing that happens when you're not really expecting it to happen. And that's what makes it so difficult to navigate sometimes.
Hello, Vin. You are now visible to the world too. If you want to add in on this, by all means. I don't know if you could hear the whole time.
I heard bits and pieces, and what I heard was good. Like ditto, co-signed. Everybody has already nailed it on the head.
Incredible. Okay. Well, that brings me into our next question. So we're saying like, what is it? Now my question is why? Why is bleed? Like, why do fictional experiences like it's not real? Like, why does it affect our real feelings? And like what's actually happening here, like socially, physically, psychologically, what's going on when this occurs?
I think just the fact that you said it's not real brings up something in me, because we're empathetic creatures. Like we want to make connections with people, whether they're real or fictional, whether they're people sitting across from us at a table, across a screen, or somebody that we're reading, like a character we're reading in a book. Like we want to make that connection because we like to feel things. We like to feel connected. And when it's that same, I know you're not saying it in this way, but like when people say it's just a game, it's like it's more than that. It's we are putting ourselves in situations, in circumstances, in emotional connective spaces where we are feeling those things, because if we didn't, it wouldn't have the same impact on us, and we wouldn't have that same drive to tell these stories. We tell these stories because we want to feel these things. And I think we have to be able to hold these spaces where we're feeling bleed or where we're feeling connected with this knowledge of it's not real, in the sense of we're not actually in this physical space doing these things, but we are in this emotional, socio-emotional space where we are having these conversations. We are drawing from parts of ourselves, and that part is real. And so I think that we feel that way because there is a part of us where it is real.
Yeah. Yeah, I could bounce right off of that. It's because we care. In these games, these, tabletop role-playing games, or even role-playing games in general, or like we were kind of saying, just narratives in general, and connecting to them, having that care for something is enough to create a real emotional response. And to deny that it isn't real because it doesn't have like a physical, um, I guess, point that's like, actually going to impact things outside of whatever the narrative is that we're creating. There is a reality to the things that we're feeling, and it really is just because we care. I think even in real life, perspective can really create emotions to things that people may not find real, even though there are those physical, I can't find the word right now. It's always when I get on these things I lose words. But the physical point of reference, if we have a certain perspective, will create an emotion, even if that perspective is not shared by multiple people. So applying that to a game as well, which isn't real, really, you're still going to have that emotional connection just because you care and have the perspective as such.
Yeah, I think that, well, I know that, like, one of the first things we all do as human beings when we're very small is play. Like, play is how we explore the world, explore our feelings, and like, kind of practice being alive. We practice relationships and situations through play. We explore the world through play, and I don't think that that stops when we stop being children. Like, we, as human beings, we are storytellers, and playing games and telling stories is part of how we negotiate our relationship to the wider world and other people. And I think that that's why bleed can happen, because we are experimenting with feelings that maybe we have had in our real lives, but maybe we haven't. Like, maybe we're experimenting with situations we've never been in real life, and feeling those feelings. And if that's new to us, then maybe it's harder to put it away. It comes out in unexpected ways when we're experimenting with those feelings.
And just hopscotching on that, the double-edged sword of all, our brains are going to tell us it's real, even though we know we're in a fake space or a pretend setting. We're going to react like emotionally, physically, etc., to whatever we're pretending to do. So I guess that is also like falling back on the bleed thing, because our little noggins.
Yeah, what you guys are saying about like the noggins and the empathy. I know I was reading about this one thing. It was in the context of like reading stories, but they had people read stories well if in an fMRI where they're like monitoring your brainwaves. And the way we process the fictional stuff was like very similar to how we process it when it's real. Um, what a weird bunch of meat we got up here, hey? Just little empathetic storytelling creatures.
And that's one of the things too that makes these types of games so applicable for like, therapeutic applications, right? Because when we're practicing things like social skills, or we're practicing things like problem solving or self-advocacy, I see a lot of that in these types of games, of saying how you feel, saying the thing that you want to say in a space that feels a little bit safer, with a table that you trust, with people that you trust, maybe in a space where you can explore parts of yourself that coming back to did TTRPGs tell me that I'm gay? Maybe, right? Like when you're able to express these things and practice and try on these things in these spaces, that's incredibly real for us. And we're able to
Mhm.
take that from a game setting to real life, or to other areas of our lives where maybe we can be in not so much of a brave space as our table, but we can practice that and try it on in other areas. That's a real application for these games, and for this type of connection that's beyond the table.
That's so fascinating too, because I don't think of myself as someone who's played games therapeutically. However, the big exception was one time when I created a character and I was like, that she's gonna be Fae, and so in this society, there's no gender. They just don't have it. And isn't that so different and quirky? And I was like, I'm gonna play a character who uses they them pronouns and has no concept of gender, truly does not experience it, did not grow up with it. And, like, I like, the way I heard the egg crack when it happened, like, I was like, "Oh, no." I was like it was like an orchestra. And I was like, I need to process this for like a significant amount of time. So I think that's really, I wouldn't have ever contextualized that as bleed, but it literally did like a fictional character and experience changed me as a real person forever, apparently. Whoops.
And I just want to put my therapist hat on just for a real quick second and say that these games are not therapy. These spaces should not be spaces for you to search for or seek out therapy, but they can be inherently therapeutic. So like, yes, it can have therapeutic value. Yes, with a table that you trust, you can explore these things and it can be wonderful and life-changing. Your GM is not your therapist. Your table is not a support group. Like don't do that to to people or to yourself. But you can, in the course of this, discover incredible transformative things about yourself. So try it.
Yeah. It'll be fun. Maybe the Fae will steal your gender too. It's just live a little. Um, my next question is, so we've been talking about bleed. We've been talking about how fictional experiences can affect us in our real life, outside of game life, okay? Uh, whatever we're gonna call it. But can bleed go the other way? Like, can my real life and real experiences bleed into the story, into how my character feels and how their behavior is? Is that still bleed or is that something different? And are the risks different?
I'd say it's definitely bleed. I think bleed can go in both directions, like for all the reasons we've already been talking about, that it's all about the electrical signals going on up there and the confusing things they make us feel. But I think that kind of the risks, if you like, I don't know if that sounds a bit like dramatic, but the risks can be a bit different. I think that like when things are like bleeding in from the outside world into the game, I think that we have to be so cognizant of like the interpersonal relationships of the people around the table and how our bleed can be affecting them in a way that might be less of a concern when it's about you stepping away from the table and having bleed after the fact. I think that we have a responsibility not only to not make our GM our therapist, but not to make like the world outside our friend's problem when we're here to play a game. And you know, and to understand when our outside baggage is affecting our gameplay and making sure it's not affecting how we're treating the people around us. I think that would be one of the big risks of not being cognizant of the fact that maybe there's a little bit of bleed going on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm really struck by the idea that, like, are what are the risks in that way? Because yeah, no, there absolutely are. I think it definitely comes from people who have like heightened emotional states about maybe about other players at the table or just whatever life thing is going on. That as you are portraying this character, may inform your decision making as the character that doesn't necessarily make sense narratively, right? Because these characters are kind of following their own kind of set of events, but you're coming in and you're applying your real life events to what they may be doing. So, suddenly your character is more aggressive and may go and attack somebody for some reason. I don't know, like, if we're like D&D kind of thing, right? That they wouldn't do in character because you as a person are feeling more aggressive, for example. I I can share an experience myself, like not in full detail, but I have kind of had this thing where I came to a table having been frustrated with friends that I was playing at the table, and it was something where I was able to kind of curb it and not really let that affect my character, but I was definitely aware of my heightened emotion and aggression um, after the fact, where I was like, oh, this isn't what their character feels about my character, or I'm sorry, no, this is what this character feels about the character, not what they feel about me. And being aware of that and making sure that I wasn't being like affected personally by what a character's action was doing to not me. I think that could be really important, especially just recognizing that and making sure that those are separate.
Honestly, I think it kind of depends on where you're pulling from that emotion or place or experience, because it could be an opportunity for like representation or talking about at least where you come from, like geographically on both ends. I can think of example. I couldn't think of a character, so I just pulled something right out of my resume. I worked at this job I didn't like, and what if I had stayed there? So I put that kind of I guess potential remorse into a character and made a wonderful tragedy. Check out Are We Dead Yet? But on the other hand, also in Vampire Land, I realized in play that I have a line for police brutality. Um, Even though the character I was playing was a white cisgender man who wouldn't have any issues with police. And I was like, okay, I need to figure this out and at least be honest with the table and going forward. So it's column A, column B, in my opinion.
That really sets us up nice for the next question because I have also I have had it where people were like at my table. We didn't use the language bleed, but where someone was like, "I had the worst day at work. I need to kill something in this game right now." Like, and like, it was like very like, and I was like, hey, we're all communicating, like the emotions are being worked out in a safer place than you beating up your boss, which would be less safe. So like, that's great. But so this question's actually in two parts. And it's both about how to manage bleed. But the second part's gonna be how to manage it as an individual by myself in my heart. But the first part is how do we manage it at the table as a group of people? Like what kind of safety tools, communication strategies can we use to manage this as a group?
I think like the anecdote you just told was like such a nice simple example of one of these things, which is like just checking in with everyone before we start playing about like where's everyone's brains at today. Like I feel like even having that moment of communication of like I do want to do some murdering, but not because of any of you all. It's like because of my boss who I want to vicariously murder. Like having that conversation gives a space for it to again like not be bleak, because if like Gina said, it maybe one of the hallmarks of bleak and it being usually unintentional. If we've had that conversation, then it's all kind of on the surface. And like I'm a big advocate for checking in throughout games all the time. Like a story I can tell is like playing Delta Green, which is a sort of horror mystery, lots of spooky stuff going on kind of game. I was playing a one shot with some people I didn't know, and two of us in character got into a blazing row, and we were like yelling at each other. We were really intense, and then there was just a moment where I was like, we're all is this okay for you? Are you having fun? Are we're just having fun and playing? You understand we're not actually arguing? And he's like, yeah, no, this is great. And we're like, okay, straight back into it. And I think like that can be so valuable of just having those moments to check everyone's on the same page. And I think that can be a big thing to stop the bleed, which could have happened if we hadn't had that conversation after the game. We both might have gone away being like, was that a real argument? Are they mad at me? Did that go too far? Just having that check-in meant we could play safely.
Yeah, real fast. I'm sorry, Gina. On that, specifically about checking in, this I don't know if this touches on a later question, but basically, if anyone is like really into the story or in for like the like immersion of the game, because I know sometimes people play for that. And sometimes those check-ins can feel like it's almost like immersion breaking, which could kind of like it can be difficult to deal with your heightened emotions and then coming down and then bouncing back up. So working out beforehand with your table on if you want like a less immersion breaking kind of thing, such as like the color system. I know at tables I've worked at, like putting like a blue is kind of like a check-in, and then they can or not anonymously, but like, they can put back like green, like I'm good to keep going kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily break the emotion level that you're at, but it's still it puts in that communication, which is so important. I think everyone's going to continue to talk about communication.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go with it too, of like communication, but also your own self-reflection and your own awareness of what are, kind of like what Vin was saying, like what are your lines, what are your veils, what do you know is going to be, or as you discover, what do you find to be activating for you? What like I'm thinking of a project that I'm recording currently where I have a lot of like friend trauma. I have this like I'm sure many people will relate to this. I have this like just gnawing fear that everyone that is in my life secretly hates me and doesn't want to be around me and is always, everybody, you guys get it. And I was recording this scene with one of my best friends, and our characters are having an argument and they do not have a good relationship. And I knew that that was going to be activating or potentially activating for me. And so we've been communicative about it. And even in a scene that we were recording recently, we both like, it was an intense scene. We both kind of finished and we were like, are you getting, we're both good. We're good. We're feeling good. But also being able to check in and have those moments either before the scene or before the work is happening or during, to even just something like, like Rachel, like you were saying, of a thumbs up or a color code or just something nonverbal. Knowing who you are as a performer and as a person and what your needs are, the people at the table are not mind readers. So they are only going to know as much as you communicate to them. So being able and willing to do that is such an important piece of this too.
And again, big ditto. Like everybody said it. I love the traffic sign colors like red, yellow, green. Also hand signs. Just a particular callback back at Darkness Emergent, the vampire LARP. There was a scene where me and a couple other friends, we were on the floor like consoling each other, and someone came, "Are you guys okay?" So we're all like, and then like, right back into it. So it is very important to make sure you know those and reiterate, because some people might not know. And I know in the space everybody has a level of understanding. Hands is one of my favorites that I've learned coming around, if people are okay with PvP, and if not, just raise your hand and ask for hands. If not, just keep going.
I think one tool that I really like, and there's not always the time allocation for it, but having like a decompression post, just talking out what's going on, because the amount of games like I get invested in what we're going, and I like sad emotions, so I get really excited, and post haste I'm like really like, oh, this is so cool, so I'm like worked up, emotionally excited, and like, trying to decompress and even just talk about like, oh, that was so cool, when that can really help to, bring yourself down. So even if it's not with the people at the table, like turning around and telling a friend or a sibling or whatever, I got to message you about this, like that can also be a kind of way. Obviously, like don't just go around sharing like the weird shit that happened at your table, but like finding people that you can also decompress with can also be a really good tool just to kind of get the steam out and help bring you back down and ground you back in reality.
That not a therapist, but a person who has done a lot of therapy here reporting, is that one thing that I was taught, was that like the reason we have the instinct for like why laughter exists as like an evolutionary trait is to signal to the group that the danger has passed. Which is like if we're all very tense, and then like, before language evolved, we evolved laughter. To be like, ha ha ha, just kidding. That wasn't a saber-toothed tiger that was gonna eat us. um, and that signals to us that we can like release that stress now, that we don't need to fight or flight. I always think about that in like the debrief sessions as like when we can reflect, and it's like putting that little boundary around it of like, now, oh, we all cried together, now we can laugh and like enjoy and feel that around it, to kind of cordon it off a little. And about the hand gesture thing, I want to add, because I'm currently recording a pure horror actual play, and I most recently recorded an episode of Bluebeard's Bride, which was by far the most emotionally intense thing I've ever played, never mind filmed, doing it live. It was like right there, like truly everything we did would have been a line with a different group kind of thing, right? And one way we do it is using the gesture O, which is used for other people. So but the way at first is to say you're doing a good job, but we actually ended up using it mostly is like if someone introduced something that they're worried is on the line, but like, is this too far? And you go like this, it's like, actually, it's okay. I like that. Like, go for it. That really gory thing, we're okay with this. Even if my face is doing this, or like I'm in character sobbing, I'm like, good job. Like, um, and a new one we introduced recently was just like a little thumb up. And that's specifically for when I'm performing distress. So my character is having a panic attack or sobbing, or like something is happening and I need to quickly communicate, hey, the line is still there. We have not lost the plot entirely. And I'm just like quickly letting you guys know, because my friends are good people, and they'll be like, "Hey, you good, bestie?" And I'm like, "Don't ruin the shot." Like I'm not doing this again. So that's just like a nice way to do it. But then we also have like timeouts to check in and be like, "Are we good?" So I love hand gestures. As someone who's not very good at keeping track of stuff that's outside the scene, when I'm in the scene, hand gestures is my favorite way to go too. So I'm glad y'all brought that up. Um, okay, and now the second half of the same question, which is what techniques can we use as individuals to manage bleed? Whether that's before we come to the table, while we're at the table, or after we leave.
I feel like I keep going first. Hey, everyone, listen to me, Michelle. Uh, I think that like we're kind of already sort of talking about like debriefs, and I think that that's such a huge one that's so valuable for all of us as individuals. Like Rachel said, even if sometimes after a game everyone's got a jet, but you can still debrief by talking to someone in your life. My partner is very used to being in bed and me being like, "Hello, it's yapping hours. Now I have to tell you everything that happened in my game." But if you're somebody who likes journaling or writing notes, like that can be a lovely way to just work through like what happened in the game and separating the game from what's happening next. I do a lot of acting in theater, and like de-rolling exercises is a huge thing for me, of like at the end of a performance taking off the costume mindfully and being like, I am taking off the character, is something I do for performance. And I've brought that a lot into not just like performing in actual plays, but anytime I'm gaming, I tend to have something I'm wearing which I associate with the character. It doesn't have to be a full costume, especially if I'm just playing with friends, but like a little bracelet or a hairband or something that's the character. And when it's time to end the game and go back to chatting with my friends, I like to take it off and make a point of being like, I'm taking the character off now. That's finished, and I'm like putting her or them to one side. I find that really valuable and a really simple way to, again, not making breaking the flow of the conversation to do it, but something you can just do for yourself quietly that I find really valuable.
Yeah, I love the costume technique. That's actually something that I haven't thought of, but I want to put into practice now because that is so smart. Having a physical signifier of what that character is. Props to that. I love that. Um, I was going to say, having a self check-in before you even sit down with the group or go to wherever you're playing or whatever, and just being aware of your mental state. I feel like bleed often comes from, and I kind of expressed it before, heightened emotions or just being agitated by something else, not necessarily agitated in a bad way, bad, good, whatever. But when we have those elevated emotional states, I feel like we can kind of, it's almost like they're sponges that they can just kind of absorb things to make them stick around or, be grounded in something that we're not really anticipating. So just being aware of how you're feeling, um, or at least checking in with yourself about, I guess, how you want to process things, on your own way safely, I think is kind of just a big check-in, like, especially if you're going into any kind of thing that you're anticipating on a high emotional performance or play space. I think it's just always good to do.
I'm thinking about when I was recording my most recent episode with Heart is a Dungeon for No Gods, No Afters, where I won't give spoilers, but it's the darkest I've ever gotten with a character. And it was ADR for me. So I was just alone in my closet, uh, recording this long monologue description of the I won't say what happens, but my character was not doing well, and it was I was very emotional as I was recording it, and I'm a very immersive player. I listen to music. I make a playlist for every character that I play. I'm pouring that into my ears as I'm recording. I was in the zone when I was recording that, and also it was really intense, and something that I like to do when I'm doing something like that where it's just me, there's nobody else in the room with me, is I use music to bring myself out as well. I use music to bring myself in, and I have another playlist. I'll sit there I sat in my closet after recording that for a good 20 minutes listening to playlists that remind me of me, that bring me back into myself, that bring me back into like the spaces that I am in, the mode that I'm in, and bring myself out of where I was previously. I love being fully immersed in my characters. I feel like that's what makes me the kind of performer that I am, but I can't stay there, which is what happens with Bleed, right? So like I use the same techniques that I use to bring myself out as I did to bring myself in.
You've just reminded me of something else that I like to do, which is like physical movement as well. Like, especially like all of us as AP folks, but then play a lot of games sitting in front of our computer, and like just standing up and shaking it off can do so much for like changing your setting, changing your placement. When I I played a character on Who Hurt You in the Crimson Enlightenment, which was a nasty vampire lady, and her posture was really this. And I just had to like roll my shoulders, sit back upright, and stop with the hunched posture. And that made such a difference to just be like, and she's gone, and I'm Michelle again, and Michelle sits this way. Having those little physicality moments, even if you're not consciously changing your posture, I think with really intense scenes and characters and role play, you can become really carrying all of those emotions in your body. So taking a moment to take a breath and just shake it off can be surprisingly valuable.
Again, I'll just have to say ditto after I say anything. But turning in on costuming and physicality, I have to keep talking about LARP because this is where I experienced most of it. Um, People were talking about LARP drop, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be fine. There's nothing gonna happen to me. I have a clear separation of my character and myself. It'll be fine." But when we came into the hotel after the last night of role playing, it fell like as if a roof or like cement block just hit me on the head of how like, okay, now I have to go back to being normal after 3 nights in a row of hours of role playing. And I had to just like take everything off. I did have a playlist. I put on some music and just recentered as who I am. And I made it worse because I had to do a really nasty breakup or watching my coterie mates hook up with my ex. It was weird. There's video about it. Y'all can check that out too. But um it's crazy to think about, like, how you can perform and be so engaged and how it just comes on you, and then you have to peel it off. Even if it wasn't a negative experience or a bad thing for you physically or mentally, you have to come back to it, and you miss life, you miss yourself, and everything you guys said is just perfect examples of how to come back to.
That's really interesting. And most of the stuff that I read about Bleed was in the context of LARP, specifically for our next question, which addresses the concept of playing for Bleed intentionally. And the idea, this is something that I think that I only read about in the context of Nordic LARP, but I think it can exist in many places. And for those who don't know, there is this history here of sometime LARP being so intense where it's getting to like Stanford prison experiment levels intense historically with like some of the shit that goes down in LARP. I think my understanding is that the culture has moved away from that by and large, but who's to say? When I say the culture, it's though there's one LARP culture, which is of course not true. Um, but I guess my question is bleed always bad? And then what do you guys feel about the notion of intentionally playing for bleed?
Um, Following up on that, I did use substitution for making that relationship I was playing real. I was like, okay, here's this memory of my first heartbreak and how it made me feel. And for that surprise to happen and to keep playing it, I was like, well, I guess I have to keep scratching, not like physically, but like getting deeper to let like hurt in character. We did check in, everybody made sure we were okay. Post credits, we're all laughing about it still. It's a running joke now, but in that moment, in that setting, it was as serious as a heart attack. Now, do we all need to do that? Absolutely not. It can be fun going there when we have those right measures in place, but I think you can. I think it just makes things a little bit more realistic. But if you do, you need to be 1,000% safe about it. It's not something that you just do on your own and not discuss with someone, because that's how you hurt yourself and that's how you hurt other people.
I think a thing that comes to mind for me too is like I think about bleed in stages. I think about bleed in like I take a very like Meisner method approach to performance. So I do like, it's for me, it's about authenticity, it's about spontaneity, it's about like connecting to yourself and being genuine in these responses.
Hey, what's Meisner method for anyone who doesn't know what that is? Could you tell us?
The Meisner technique or Meisner method is it's an acting term. I didn't go to acting school, so I don't really know. I just know that people have told me that that's what it is and the way that I approach it. So maybe I don't know,
Okay.
someone who's like a real actor can say what it is. But my understanding is that it is rooted in like a very common Meisner activity is like saying the same thing in different ways and trying to like respond in a way that matches your scene partner. So always flowing with the person that you are working with, always connecting to yourself, but also to the other. It's a lot of immersion, really, is what Meisner relies on. And I feel like when we're talking about playing for bleed, the first stage of bleed is what we're playing for is immersion. What we're playing for is to be able to experience whether it's spontaneous or not, whether it's often it is unintended, but what we're looking for is to feel connected to our characters, to feel connected in the moment. It's when we get out of the scene, it's when we get out of what was intentional. Because if we're playing for bleed, there is intentionality there, right? So it's when we're done with the scene and the bleed continues, or we're not aware of it, or we're not able to manage it or mitigate it, that's when it becomes a problem. So it's stage 2 bleed that for me, I feel like that's where it gets dangerous. If you're aware of it and if you know what you're doing and you have the ability to bring yourself out of it, playing for bleed is not a bad thing. I personally, that's what I aim for when I'm performing. I aim for immersion. I aim for being able to be that connected. You just have to know when it ends.
To clarify the Meisner technique, I had to clarify with myself because there's all different kinds of acting techniques. But the Meisner technique is actually about putting the reaction in like how other people, like how other performances are happening or what's happening around you, so as to not be so connected with yourself. Like you're reacting as yourself, but you're more so reacting on what is happening around you. Versus the Strasberg technique is more about personalization, like Vince was saying that he was doing. And really like finding things in your own life to connect to then create an emotional response that you then put into your performance. There's really no way that's wrong.
Maybe it's like a combination for me then. It's like
It
a
could be
mixing of those two. Yeah.
it could be a combination. Yeah, there's again all different styles and things. I don't even know what I use. I People have said I'm method, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. I'm like, I don't even know what that even means. But yeah, so I had a point that was additional to what I was going to say about Strasberg. What are we talking about? Right, playing for bleed. I
Yeah.
yeah, right. Hi ADHD. I don't think bleed is inherently bad, and I don't think playing for bleed is inherently bad. That's my stance on it. Like everyone has been kind of saying, making sure that you're being safe about it and not just kind of going in and being like, I'm bringing my emotions hard on these people, whether they like it or not. Like that's where it's bad. But I just think for me, these games are about experiencing the emotion, obviously in a safe way, in a way that's communicative. But I do love playing for bleed in a way. I do like having those connections. Obviously, bleed and then kind of put it in a snow globe, put it on a shelf kind of thing. Like, but those feelings, like being able to kind of when you read a book and you kind of carry those stories with you and you're like, oh god, that was, I do like that, and I think it's fun. And um I am someone who goes to therapy regularly, so I, keep myself mentally in check. um, which I think is important if you're going to kind of play, do I say on the edge like that? Um, it's emotional play. I mean, like we've kind of talked about earlier, we're all people and we're all emotional. And I think for me, it gets me to be more aware and in touch with my emotions, so that when I'm in real life, I feel like I have a better connection to empathy and understanding of other people and their situations. Because I'm not always playing good people in these games. I'm sure not doing what I would do in these games sometimes, but like when I'm, those bad people, like when I bring that out, I look at other people and I go, oh my gosh, they must be hurting, because I know like what I had to do to put myself in relationship with that character. I think for me, it's just a practice of empathy in general, which is why I like it that way. But yeah.
I guess I'll also just really quickly say I have definitely recently played with the intention of, I guess, bleed or just getting emotions out. Like when we were recording God Killer Balance via Blackwater and D&D, I lost my dog of 14 years. He was 17 and he passed as we were recording. And I went to a recording session and I was like, I will be weeping. And I cry a lot in that show. But like that was intentionally, I knew that I had a space where I could go and I could get those emotions out and I could actively grieve in a space where it was designed for that, where my character was grieving. I utilized that in recording and it was a gift. Granted, a very safe table to do that. Also being a therapist, not my therapist, but also like, and we talked about it and we knew that that was going to be coming up, but like that was a very, I think, useful way for me to utilize that and play for bleed.
I'm really walking back my statement that I haven't had bleed in a game now, because I'm like, wait a second, because I feel like it's like a thing where in like Wayward Autumnal and all the horror games I've recorded recently for the show that's coming out in October, follow or whatever. I've always brought in like actual real trauma from my life. And it's funny because it's only recently that I feel like I've been emotionally stable enough to do that and to like take something that was real. And I'm like, let's see if we can repackage this in a horror context. And that makes it like feel weirdly defanged. I'm like, I'm going to take this real thing, I'm going to put it over into fiction land and it's safe over there. And you hold on to that now, like, ooh, spooky instead of like, real problems. And I think that's so interesting of like, that being a kind of playing for bleed, but making sure you have all those safety barriers of like, I'm in a place to do this, I could do this, right?
I'm going to take these
Okay.
parent wounds and just package them right up into this little character and play them out here. It's fine. How
And
many of
that
your
brings
therapists know about your TTRPG characters? Because mine does. She knows about all of them.
This brings us so beautifully to the next question, which is, how does bleed interact with catharsis? With this concept, and like catharsis coming from like, Greek tragedy in the sense of relief we get after watching a fictional tragedy, but how do those interplay? And I also say we can use catharsis in the colloquial sense. I won't hold you to the literary sense either.
I'll start with that because I think there's definitely a difference between catharsis and bleed. However, there's definitely an overlap. In the Venn diagram, there can be one, there can be the other, but there absolutely can be both at the same time. Because catharsis is, it is those real emotions that we're feeling, and bleed is connecting those real emotions to not real things. So I think they absolutely kind of can go hand in hand. They don't have to exist together. But again, as long as you're, really communicating what you're trying to get out of, a story that you're portraying, or at least just being aware of your feelings and catching yourself if you're kind of getting catharsis in a place that you haven't communicated. I think those things are really important.
Yeah, I think I would agree with the fact that they aren't the same thing, but I can definitely see how they come together. There's there's no way to use this anecdote without sounding super big-headed, but we're going there. My character in the actual play of the Between on the Bad Spot YouTube channel, is a monster. She's probably the worst person I've ever played. But everyone treats her like she's wonderful and loves her because she's so beautiful. And I really wanted to like play with some feelings about objectification that I think a lot of femme presenting people in TTRPG and any kind of nerd space have experienced. I really wanted to like deal with that by creating a monster. And I definitely think, you know, there's some stuff which could be argued to be bleed, of me bringing in experiences from my own life of ways I was treated that I didn't like and turning it around into something grotesque. Like, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing because it was also very cathartic. It was a way of expressing a story and expressing a point of view. And I think again, we keep coming back to the same thing, that it's about communicating with your table that that's what you're trying to do, and it's about being honest with yourself about what you're trying to do, and knowing I am going to bring these feelings into this space, and I'm prepared for that, and I'm prepared for what it might bring up, and I have some kind of plan. I'm going to make a cup of tea after this. I'm going to look forward to my cup of tea to bring myself back down to earth after I've dealt with this cathartic moment. So I think it can be a really wonderful thing. And again, where the bad side of bleed comes in is when you're not able to bring it to a close, when it's time to bring it to a close, I think.
I think that's the thing too about the difference is that catharsis has an end point. Like catharsis is a release, it's a state of release that it has like a buildup, right? And then it has a there's finality to it. And what makes bleed dangerous is that it's when the bleed lingers that it's the problem, right? When there isn't that release. So we can have, and I think maybe that's what separates stage 1 bleed from stage 2 is when you have that catharsis, when you are immersed and you are experiencing that stage 1 bleed, you have the catharsis, it's final, it like ends the cycle. And if you don't, or if it continues on afterward, that's when it gets tricky. So catharsis, I feel like, is kind of what we're striving for when we're in immersive spaces.
And just again, ditto, everybody since said the cool things. I feel like as well, going upon catharsis is the end. I feel like it's just also just satisfaction. I don't think that technically is bleed when you have like a good pivotal moment, good story moment that hits and everything falls into place, and that release there might just be like my friend Ambrose would call like movie tingles, like the movie feel when everything is just great. But I can see where bleed can come into that. But everybody's been so cool. You guys are so great.
I have an analogy that I came up with, and this is a roller derby analogy for bleed specifically. Which is okay. Hold on. There. Which is okay, so in roller derby, which is a full contact sport where everyone's on roller skates, okay? If the jammer comes into the pack hot, they get a penalty. But they can come into the pack fast, but not hot, and that's okay. And the difference is how much control they have. So if there's a sense that someone just barreling into the crowd of people when they're like out of control and they're just like going in, and I feel like we might have had this experience at the table where you're like, someone's coming in and their emotions are coming in hot. They are not controlling these are not being contained, versus the difference being when, even if you're coming in with those big emotions, if you have enough control that you're able to maneuver them, that you're still able to like dance around a bit, then that's a completely different thing.
I love that analogy. I also love the lore we've unlocked about you, Anne, that you use roller derby analogies, but you needed TTRPGs to realize you were gay. That's great.
Listen, when everyone's gay, no one's gay. That's the thing, right? Like, if you're just normal and you're hanging out with a fellow
Listen,
group of
eggs in
normal
glass houses, okay? Like
All right. And that brings us to the end. I would like to give us a quick chance to sign off and leave a closing statement. So I'm Anne, and here's my closing summary about Bleed. Are you ready? Know yourself and where you're at emotionally day to day. Set up ways to communicate with the table in advance. to communicate effectively and have some way to get out of it after it being it. Like whatever it is, a way to step out of it after. Also, I forgot to plug us on Patreon at the top. So if you like these panels, you can support us on Patreon. Okay. And we're going to do sign-offs in the opposite order of last time, which means we're going to start with Vin. So Vin, could you tell the lovely folks in chat where they can find you on the internet and any closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, I have my whole spiel, which goes, oh my gosh, hi, I'm Vin at VinVoxVA on all the socials except Blue Sky, that is vinvox.com, which is also my website because I'm a voice actor and tabletop performer. I think everything has been said, and I think this has been such an illustrious panel to be on, and it's so nice to meet all of you and see some of you again. Hi, Rachel, how you doing? Honestly, love your characters, but love yourself more. Like, you don't have to sacrifice everything to be an amazing player. Make sure you know your boundaries and know yourself, and make sure you care about everybody else at the table to know their boundaries and know them to a degree that you can say, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Et cetera, and so forth.
That's really nice. Up next, Rachel. Hey, Rachel, where can these lovely folks find you? And anything you want to plug and any closing thoughts you want to share?
Sure, yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Rachel Kordell. You can find me across the internet at Rachel Kordell. That's Kordell with a K. I'm on Twitch here as Majora's Rose. I produce the actual play podcast RPJesters, and I jump around a couple other tables, including Heart is a Dungeon, Folk and Myth, which actually has a game tonight that I'm going to be in at 9 o'clock Eastern if you are watching live. Yeah, some closing statements. I think I would say, you know, if you're some quick easy ways to like figure out where you're at emotionally, like if you're feeling agitated for some reason and you don't really have a place for it, make sure that you're drinking water and that you've eaten food, and maybe take a nap, because sometimes the simplest ways that we can take care of ourselves can help really just bring ourselves down from some place that we're not really sure where we're even feeling it from. And self-care is so important, especially if we're getting into games where we're kind of dealing with heightened emotions with other people. It's so important. Take care of yourself, love yourself. You are worthy of all the self-care you can give. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
That's really nice and also excellent advice, especially for any of my neurodivergent buds in chat who sometimes, when things are going on, we lose our sense of internal awareness. And sometimes you can be like, oh no, I'm distressed. And actually, you are thirsty. um, okay, continuing around. Gina, where can these lovely folks find you and any closing thoughts?
Wow, I'm the worst at these. Okay, so oh hey, it's me. Oh hey, it's Gina. You can find me by that name most places on the internet. I don't know. I tell a lot of sad stories. I try not to make them all sad, but I guess it just comes out of me. You can find me. Uh, you might know me from Blackwater D&D's God Killer Balance, as ever. You might know me from various productions at The Heart is a Dungeon, most recently as Finch. Just trying to stay alive on the Panic Table, various shows with them. I guess. Uh, oh, also I freelance, right? So if you've done some Pathfinder stuff, you might see some of my stuff in Pathfinder. I write for them. Closing statements would be: it's okay to cry about your characters. It's okay to cry about stories. Sometimes you need to. But these games aren't therapy, so make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Enjoy the therapeutic benefits, but also take care of yourself. And I don't know. I think as we try to make homes in so many of our characters, but it's really important to know how to come home to yourself at the end of it.
That's really nice too, y'all. Very wholesome panel we got going. All right, and our last guest, Michelle. Tell the lovely folks here where they can find you, what they should look for, and any closing thoughts you have to share.
Yeah, hi, I am, and goodbye. I am Michelle Kelly. I'm an actor, voice actor, singer, TTRPG performer. yapper in a variety of formats. You can find me at michellecopter on the socials. I'm also a staff member at EUphoria Actual Plays, which is an actual play studio highlighting the diversity and talent of TTRPG creatives all across Europe. So check us out. We have all sorts of great stuff coming up on the pipeline on our Twitch channel. And yeah, I mean, you all are so wise. There's so many closing statements that have already been. So I guess I will just add on that the stories we tell are important and the games we play are important, but they're not as important as you. That's right, you, my parasocial best friend. Look after yourself. No game, no story is worth causing yourself or the people you're playing with real, genuine harm. So stay safe and tell wonderful, beautiful, tragic stories. And then have those moments of catharsis and of debrief and have your cup of tea and your de-rolling ritual. And then you can come back next week and tell more stories without causing yourself any pain.
And that's beautiful too. Oh my gosh. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been so informative. We all learned maybe too much about me specifically, and I think that's appropriate for a panel about boundaries. Thank you so much, chat, for joining us, and we will see you next month for our next panel. All right, goodbye.